Welcome back to the deep dive. Today, we're tackling something I think a lot of people have probably experienced. Those breakups that leave you kind of reeling. Like, wait, what just happened? We're going to dive into how some people with narcissistic tendencies might actually be manipulating the relationship to the point where you are the one to break up with them.
It's really fascinating and heartbreaking. And what's so interesting about this deep dive is we're examining it through the lens of a self-proclaimed narcissist.
Oh, wow.
We'll be looking at a YouTube video where they actually detail the tactics they use to orchestrate a discard.
So we're getting like the playbook from someone who's done this before.
Yeah.
That's pretty rare to get that kind of insight.
Yeah.
Before we get into the specifics, can we just quickly define discarding in this context? I know it's a term that's kind of thrown around a lot, but it has a very specific meaning when we're talking about this type of relationship.
Absolutely. In a relationship with somebody who has strong narcissistic traits, discarding is the act of ending the relationship abruptly, often with just complete disregard for your feelings. And it's important to remember that not every person with narcissistic tendencies will use this tactic, and discard can happen for various reasons. But what we're focusing on today is a calculated manipulation designed to make the partner feel so miserable that they choose to leave.
So it's not just like, oh, we're not compatible. It's much more deliberate than that.
Exactly.
Okay, so let's break it down. What's the first sign something's off?
Well, it often starts with emotional detachment. Remember, at the beginning of the relationship, someone with narcissistic tendencies will often present this captivating and idealized version of themselves. And they'll shower you with attention and compliments and affection, a tactic sometimes called love bombing.
Oh, love bombing. I've heard that term before, but I never really understood what it meant, like in practice.
It's all about creating this intoxicating bond very quickly. But the problem is, it's not sustainable. Think of it like an actor wearing a mask. Eventually, that mask starts to slip, revealing the person's true nature underneath.
Gotcha. So that's the first red flag, the mask slipping. What happens next?
As the mask slips, the individual starts to withdraw emotionally.
Right.
They may become less attentive, less interested in your life, less willing to really put in the effort to maintain that connection they worked so hard to create in the beginning. And this is, of course, incredibly confusing and hurtful for the partner on the receiving end.
Yeah, it's such a 180 from how the relationship started. You're left wondering, like, what happened to that person I fell for?
Right. That's exactly the kind of confusion they're aiming for.
Wow.
And as that emotional distance grows, it often leads to a physical disconnect as well.
Right. The YouTuber we're looking at, he had a pretty striking analogy for this. He talked about it like a decline in applause.
Yes.
Starting with like enthusiastic clapping of the cheeks, moving to a less enthusiastic standing ovation, and then eventually even that fades away.
Right. It's a crude but effective way to illustrate how physical intimacy starts to dwindle. The person who is manipulating the situation becomes less affectionate, less interested in physical touch. Intimacy becomes almost non-existent.
So it's not just a lack of interest, it's almost like a deliberate withholding.
Exactly. It's about creating a sense of unease and insecurity in you. And this is where things can take a darker turn. Because this distancing isn't just about fading away, it's often accompanied by something much more deliberate, devaluation and mistreatment.
This is so interesting. Why would someone who's planning to exit the relationship go out of their way to be unkind? Wouldn't it just be easier to ghost or like slowly fade out?
It might seem counterintuitive, but remember, this is about control. They're intentionally pushing you to the breaking point. They want to create an environment where you feel so unhappy and unappreciated that you make the decision to leave.
Oh, so they don't want to be the bad guy.
You got it.
They make you do it.
By forcing your hand, they get to play the victim. They can tell everyone, oh, I tried so hard to make this relationship work, but they were the one who gave up.
It's all about protecting their image, that perfect image.
Exactly. And this is where the concept of narcissistic supply comes in.
Okay, I've heard that term before, but I'm not entirely sure I understand it. Can you break that down for me?
Sure. Think of it this way. Individuals with strong narcissistic tendencies often crave admiration, attention, and validation from others. They need this constant influx of positive reinforcement, this narcissistic supply, to feel good about themselves. And it can come from various sources: romantic partners, friends, family, even strangers.
So by orchestrating the breakup in this way, they're not only protecting their image, but they're setting themselves up to easily get that supply from someone new.
Exactly. They might already be lining up their next source of admiration and validation while they're in the process of devaluing and pushing you away. They need to ensure that supply doesn't run dry.
This is heavy stuff. It's like a carefully constructed emotional trap designed to leave you feeling confused and hurt, and ultimately responsible for the relationship ending.
It's a powerful and insidious form of manipulation. And while we're just scratching the surface here, understanding these initial stages, the mask slipping, the emotional and physical disconnect, and the deliberate mistreatment is crucial for recognizing the pattern.
So, for our listener, if you're starting to see these red flags in your own relationship, it's a sign to pay attention.
Absolutely. Don't ignore those warning signs. Trust your instincts, and we'll delve deeper into why they might choose this path and how you can protect yourself when we come back.
So before the break, we were talking about the subtle but kind of powerful ways some people with narcissistic tendencies manipulate a relationship to force a discard. And it really got me thinking, why go through all this trouble to make the other person break up with them? Like, why not just end it themselves?
It's a great question. And the answer lies in the complex psychology of narcissism. It all boils down to control, ego, and this deep-seated need to preserve their own image, even if it comes at the expense of others.
So can you help me understand this a little better? We hear the word narcissist thrown around so much these days, but what's actually going on beneath the surface? What drives this need for control?
Well, despite their outward appearance of confidence and self-importance, people with strong narcissistic tendencies often grapple with, deep insecurity. They might have a very fragile sense of self-worth, fear of vulnerability, or an intense need for validation from others.
So it's like a wall of arrogance protecting a really fragile ego.
That's a great way to put it. And by manipulating the situation to make you initiate the breakup, they shield themselves from the perceived rejection of being dumped. It reinforces their belief that they are in control, always one step ahead, never at fault.
So it's not just about avoiding the label of being the bad guy, it's about protecting themselves from that emotional blow.
Exactly. And remember that need for constant admiration and validation we talked about earlier, that narcissistic supply.
Right.
Orchestrating a discard plays right into that.
Right, because if they're the ones who are wronged, they can easily get sympathy and support from others, which feeds that need for validation.
Precisely.
Yeah.
It allows them to maintain that victimhood narrative, which in turn ensures a steady stream of narcissistic supply.
And as you mentioned earlier, they might even be lining up their next source of supply while they're still in the relationship, almost like a backup plan, so they never have to face those feelings of emptiness or inadequacy.
That's a key point.
Yeah.
They might be engaging in what's called triangulation, bringing in a third person, maybe a potential new partner, a friend, even a family member, to create a sense of competition or jealousy. And again, it's a manipulation tactic that further solidifies their control and feeds their ego.
This has given me a lot to think about. If someone's listening and realizing, oh, I think I might be in a relationship with someone who has these tendencies, what can they do to protect themselves?
The first and most crucial step is awareness. Now that you are recognizing the signs of this manipulative tactic, you can start to make more informed choices about your relationship.
So what are some concrete steps someone can take once they've kind of identified these red flags?
The most important thing is to trust your instincts. If something feels off, if your partner's words and actions don't align, pay attention to that inner voice. Don't dismiss your feelings or try to rationalize their behavior.
Yeah, it's so easy to get caught up in trying to please someone with these tendencies, to win back that initial affection and attention. But it sounds like it can be a losing battle.
Absolutely. You can't change someone who isn't willing to change themselves. And it's crucial to remember that you deserve to be treated with respect and kindness. You deserve a partner who values you, who cherishes your presence, not someone who uses you as a pawn in their own manipulative games.
Yeah, walking away from any relationship is difficult, but it sounds like staying in a relationship with someone like this can be incredibly damaging in the long run.
It can be. And while ending things is going to be painful, it's essential to prioritize your own well-being. It's about reclaiming your power and creating a life where you are truly valued and respected.
So for our listener, if you're recognizing these patterns and feeling trapped or manipulated, remember that you have the strength to choose a different path.
Exactly. You are not alone. And there are resources available to help you navigate this challenging situation. Therapists who specialize in this type of relationship dynamic can provide invaluable guidance and support. And there are countless online communities and support groups where you can connect with others who have had similar experiences.
This has been such an eye-opening conversation so far. We've uncovered the motivation behind why someone might manipulate their partner into initiating the breakup, and we've talked about how to start recognizing those red flags. But I'm curious, what happens after the breakup?
That's a great question. And it's something we'll dive into when we return for the final part of this deep dive. We'll explore the aftermath of this kind of breakup, the healing process, and some of the broader societal implications of this narcissistic tactic.
We've spent the last two parts uncovering how some individuals with narcissistic tendencies manipulate relationships, setting the stage for the other person to end things.
Right.
But I want to talk about what happens after that, because in a way, that's when the real work begins, right?
Absolutely. The aftermath of this kind of breakup can be particularly challenging because you're not just dealing with typical heartbreak. You're grappling with the emotional fallout of manipulation and the confusion of being made to feel like you were the one who failed the relationship.
The YouTuber we've been analyzing, he mentioned how the person manipulating the situation often moves on really quickly.
Yeah.
Which, can feel like a slap in the face when you're the one left picking up the pieces.
Right. It's understandable to feel hurt and even betrayed by that. You might be asking yourself, did they ever really care? But it's important to remember that their ability to seemingly detach and move on so quickly, it isn't a reflection of your worth or the value of the relationship.
So what is it a reflection of then?
It often reflects their own emotional immaturity and their need to constantly seek validation from external sources. Remember, we talked about narcissistic supply. Their focus might immediately shift to securing that supply from someone new, creating this facade of being perfectly fine while you're left processing the emotional turmoil.
Okay, that makes sense. But it also makes the healing process seem even more daunting.
It's true, the healing from this type of experience takes time and effort, but it's absolutely possible.
Okay.
One of the most crucial steps is to reconnect with yourself. Individuals with these tendencies often isolate their partners from friends and family, making them more dependent on the relationship.
Right, so they're like the center of your universe.
Exactly. So as you're healing, focus on rebuilding those connections that might have been neglected during the relationship. Spend time with loved ones who offer genuine support and remind you of your value outside of that dynamic. Engage in activities that bring you joy and help you rediscover who you are outside of that relationship.
You're basically reclaiming your life, those parts of yourself that might have been overshadowed or diminished during that time.
Exactly. And don't underestimate the power of professional guidance. Therapists specializing in this type of relationship dynamic can provide invaluable support.
Yeah.
They can help you understand the complexities of what you experience, validate your feelings, and give you the tools to navigate those difficult emotions. The self-doubt, the anger, that feeling of being used.
It's like having a guide to help you through that emotional maze you've been through.
That's a great way to put it.
And help you find your way back to solid ground.
Exactly. And remember, you're not alone. There are so many others who've been through similar experiences. Connecting with them through support groups or online communities can be incredibly validating and empowering.
That reminds me of something we were talking about before the show started. We've been talking about this dynamic in the context of romantic relationships, but I imagine these patterns could show up in other areas of life too, right?
Absolutely. While we can't diagnose anyone based solely on their behavior, if you notice a consistent pattern of someone always portraying themselves as the victim, blaming others for their misfortunes, and never taking responsibility for their actions, it could be a sign of a deeper issue.
So this knowledge isn't just about romantic relationships, it's about understanding a much broader pattern of behavior.
Exactly. It's about becoming more attuned to the dynamics of your relationships, recognizing red flags, and setting healthy boundaries.
Yeah.
And, if you see this pattern in someone you care about, encourage them to seek professional help.
This has been such an insightful deep dive. We've explored the ways some individuals manipulate relationships to force a discard, the psychology behind those actions, and the steps you can take to heal and move forward. Right. If there's one thing I want our listener to take away from this whole conversation, it's that you deserve to be in relationships where you feel valued, respected, and loved.
Couldn't agree more.
Yeah.
You deserve to be with someone who cherishes your presence and celebrates your individuality, not someone who seeks to diminish or control you. And remember, knowledge is power. By understanding these patterns, you can protect yourself and create healthier, more fulfilling relationships in all areas of your life.
I think that's a great message to end on. Thank you for sharing your expertise with us today and helping us all shed light on this complex and often misunderstood topic.
It's been a pleasure.
And to our listener, thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive. We hope you found this information useful, and we hope you'll join us again next time. Until then, stay curious and keep learning.